Well, good morning. We are going to talk today about digital transformation, both AI and the agile methodology. Now, yesterday I was walking down 6th Street, and as I was walking, I saw a bottle. So I reached down and I picked it up, and I rubbed it, and out popped a genie. And this is a true story, by the way. And the genie said to me, "Sandy, this is your lucky day, because not only are you going to get to speak at South by Southwest, but I'm going to give you 3 wishes. However, whatever you wish for, your evil arch enemy gets double." So I thought about that for a second, and I said, okay, I love Austin. Can I have a house here? Poof, I got a house here, but my evil arch enemy got 2. Then I asked for a red Tesla, because who doesn't want a red Tesla? I got my red Tesla, but poof, my evil arch enemy got 2. So for my 3rd wish, I said, "Genie, scare me half to death." Now, so what does it have to do with today? Well, my colleague Kathy and Kathy is an esteemed strategist, improv. She does improv comedy. We're going to talk to you today about a couple of things. Our 3 wishes that you get out of this session are, first, that you understand a little bit more about machine learning and AI and some of the use cases that you can leverage. That's going to be the tech part. And then we're going to sandwich in between Kathy, and she's going to lead you through some of the things that she's done at Fortune 500 companies to get you then to an agile methodology so that you can be successful in implementing machine learning and AI. And then at the end, we're going to close with some of the ways that you can use the tooling. So you're going to have tech, agile methodologies, and then tech. So let's go ahead and get started. So why are we all really interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning? Well, hopefully it's because of innovation. If we think about Ford and what Ford did with innovation, with just automating their factories, they took the time to produce a car down from 12 hours to 2 hours, which was a phenomenal disruption in the industry. And that's what most companies are looking for today. They're looking for innovation. Now, this is a very simple chart, but I use this as I talk about digital disruption and AI because a lot of people only assume that AI and machine learning can impact the product, your product. What are you producing? I'll show you some examples of that today. But what they forget is that artificial intelligence and machine learning can really influence the way you have operational excellence, perhaps with robots. It can impact your customer experience, which Gartner says is the last form of true competitive advantage. It can also impact your business model. Yesterday I was with a job search site, and they were sharing with me how they're using machine learning to better target what jobs would be perfect for you. So as we're looking at this, make sure you're thinking about all 4 of these, not just the first one, which is around the product area. Also, the reason we brought Kathy is because this is not just a technology challenge. It's an organizational challenge. One of my favorite sayings is, culture eats strategy for lunch. You've got to have the right agile methodology. You've got to have the right culture, that culture of innovation, if you're really going to be successful with any new technology, AI, machine learning included. So it's really about this organizational challenge with that embedded technical challenge that goes along with it. So let's start first with that technology. If you're going to transform your company and gain this technical flexibility and speed, there are 3 things that we really want to hone in on. 1 is the teams that you choose. 2 is the way you train those teams. And then 3rd is both your data strategy as well as your ML strategy. You need both if you're going to move forward with machine learning. So let's start first with teams. You guys may or may not know, I work for Amazon Web Services. The way that we define these really agile teams is we call them 2 pizza teams. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that we prefer teams that can only eat 2 pizzas if they have to work late. That means that team is small, they're nimble, they're empowered, they own the decisions. They're going to be the ones who are really self-directed to drive the business. Think about it really as a startup. So before I joined Amazon, I ran a startup in Silicon Valley, And small teams make all the difference. They're so much more innovative, and they're so much more resourceful of figuring out how they can apply resources as well. So think about the size of the teams that you would start with a machine learning or an AI project. And also think about the diversity of those teams. Now, I know we just celebrated International Women's Day on Friday, and we do have a lot of data that shows, especially in machine learning and AI, where you have all this data, having a diverse team really matters. These are real numbers that came from McKinsey that show that when you have diversity on teams, you're likely to grow your market share and to capture new markets. But this doesn't mean just diversity of gender. We're also talking diversity of thought. One team was struggling to innovate, and we looked at the team structure, and they were diverse with men and women. They were culturally diverse, but guess what? They had all gone to the same school, and they had one single methodology for the way they thought and how they were trained. So we mixed that up and got a lot more innovation. So think through the makeup of the team. It's as important. People are so important in this whole process. Now, we really don't have enough machine learning and AI skills out there today. And so what we recommend to our customers is to really ramp up your training over a period of time. Typically, we recommend about a 12-month period. You'll start with some people who have really strong AI and ML skills, but that first phase, you should really look at training your entire organization in phase 1 so that they all understand your goals of your projects coming up. Phase 2 is really role-based. So if you've got someone who's going to be a trainer of data, you want to train them differently. If you've got someone who's going to do your technology piece, you train them in a specialized way and focus. Phase 3, and what we recommend for a lot of customers, is that they kind of make this in a gamification. Have some certifications that are available to show progress of those skills. Phase 4 is more advanced training for your technical staff. And then phase 5 is really where you roll this out kind of in a complete manner so that you can really drive and hone in on those skill sets that you really need. Now, from Amazon, there's just a couple of ways that we've been starting to do this. As an example, we actually have a machine learning solution lab. And we bring customers in to sit with our machine learning experts. We have some of the top experts in the world. We offer that training. We do custom modeling. It's really built for what you're trying to accomplish. We also have a learning university. And what that enables you to do is to get online courses, just like we train our own developers, just like we train our own ML specialists, our own AI specialists. We introduce that as well for you to leverage and use. So think about how you're going to do the training of your teams. Now, really important, a lot of people, when they talk about machine learning, they jump right over the data. But data is the fuel for whatever you're going to do with AI or machine learning. So you have to have a strong data strategy. Now, I love this little cartoon because it kind of shows you, data's over there on the left-hand side. And what you want to do is take your data, make that into information, connect the dots, you have knowledge, and then the ideal is that you get insight. So as you're looking at your data, one of the things you want to do is you want to figure out what insights you're looking at. And do I have enough data to get me that insight, or am I missing data? So you can simulate data, you can buy data, but do you have enough data? So if you told me you had 5 data points, not enough data. You also need to look at your data quality. So if I want this insight, do I have the right set of data to give me the quality that I'm looking for as well? I will tell you, one customer I was working with was so excited about the machine learning algorithms that he ran some data through, got to some conclusions, and decided to go present it to the board. And we told him, let's wait, let's double check, make sure that data is clean. The second he presented the results, the first question was, what is that based on? What data is that based on? And that's where he kind of lost the audience, because the data he had used was not the right data and not enough data. They were data poor to make the decisions that he was looking to make. So you've really got to think through that. Now, clearly these are 2 sumo wrestlers, right? But what the University of Toronto did is they fed into machine learning model 14 million lines of romance novels. Just to illustrate the point that what you train your machine learning models on is what's going to come out. And so what came out after that training was this story. He was a shirtless man in the back of my mind, and I let out a curse as he leaned forward to kiss me on the shoulder. So we laugh, right? But then when we use data that is not the right data, and then we get the wrong answer, we struggle to go, why didn't that work? And it's the same illustration, the same example of why that does not work. So before you even start with a machine learning strategy, I could actually spend the entire hour today just on your data strategy, but I just wanted to make sure that I emphasized you have to look at your data quality, you have to look at your data quantity. Do I have enough data? Am my data poor? And you have to look at your data source. Is the source good data? Just like if you have a child, how many of you today have children? What you teach your child is usually what comes back out. The same thing will be true with machine learning. The data, the fuel that you put in, will be the insights that you get out. So just if you only remember one thing from today, remember before you develop your machine learning strategy, make sure you have a strong data strategy as well. So then just as a refresher, let's talk a little bit about what machine learning AI is. So you can see in the picture, it's really stacked. A lot of conversation about bots. I went to probably several sessions on bots. Bots leverage and use machine learning, which are the training methodologies, and artificial intelligence, which enables you to learn in order to have those conversations. This is made up of code and algorithms, and I really wanted to emphasize it only knows what it's got taught from. It makes inferences from the data that is fed into it. So all the inference work that's done comes from what it's taught. It will continue to learn, but again, based on the data that you teach it. It will make inferences just like you do. So if I see somebody and I tell them a joke and they don't laugh, my inference is they didn't think it was funny. The system will also make those same inferences based on your algorithms. So two pieces that I think are really important. One is your training area, which is your knowledge base. Some people call this a corpus of knowledge. Some call it a training base. I think most people call it a knowledge base. This is your data strategy, the way that you've labeled that so you know what it is, right? So if you have a picture of an apple and you label as an apple, that's labeling your data. So you have that part of the strategy that you use to train with. And then you've got your learning piece, which is your inference engine. So that helps you to classify and recognize and process those new inputs as you're going along. So let me just for reference as well, a lot of people put a lot of time and energy into training. And you should, because you have to have that right data and you have to have the right level of training. But most of the time is spent in inference, right? Because that's where the learning occurs. So just remember, as you're going through this, majority of your cost that you'll spend on this, the majority of your time will be on those inference models that you will use with the machine learning. So let's just look at the machine learning process itself, just so you can get a feel for it. So what you do is you collect and you prepare your training data. A lot of people will label it. I'll show you an example later on where you don't have to label data, but typically you have to label it, meaning here's an apple, let me label that as an apple. That takes a lot of work and a lot of time. Then you're going to look at how you're going to leverage your machine learning algorithm. Sometimes you'll do that from a template. Sometimes your technologists will write that themselves. You'll set up the environment for training, which means are you going to be doing visuals like facial recognition, voice, text? How are you going to train the machine learning algorithm? And so you'll do that, and it'll be a trial and error methodology, right? So did they answer correctly? Let's go back and retrain and retrain and retrain. Then you'll deploy that model into production that enables you to scale and test that model out. So the two places, you've got that data coming in. Again, I wanted to emphasize that data strategy makes a big difference because what you put in is what you're going to get out. And then in the center, how that training is done is really important as well. Makes a big difference as part of the impact. So an example, so I have an engineering team at Amazon, a very diverse team, and one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to identify certain problems that occur in code. So we took a whole set of data that we had around a whole set of technology things, like we have a high CPU error, we have memory errors. And so what we did was we started with that data, we prepared the data, and we used that as part of our machine learning algorithm. So for us, we use Amazon, so we use SageMaker to train. And once we trained, then we were able to do some trial and error with real customers. So we're able to have them test it out. And then after they were able to test it out, we were able to produce dashboards for them and invite them to also participate in training the machine learning. So that meant that not only now were we doing the training, but our customers could also participate in that machine learning model as well. So let me just walk you through a framework and then a couple of examples. We have customers that come in and say, I just don't know where to start, and you don't want to start with a technology. I want to do machine learning. You want to start with your customer. But what we recommend is that you start looking at the areas of innovation, which are at the top, that customer experience, that product, that operational, that business model area. And then down the side, what types of things are you looking to do in those particular areas? So let me show you some examples, and I'll show you this filled in as a way to maybe start thinking through a machine learning project. So on experience, this is kind of a very simple model, but you know, we just celebrated Black History Month. It was pretty dynamic this year, very successful. And one of the things that our group did was we developed Alexa skills for Black History Month on different new facts. So we trained Alexa to answer questions. If someone wanted to know the first African-American pilot, or someone wanted to know the first African-American coder, we trained Alexa with all those facts. And then anyone could ask Alexa, and she would answer that question. So this is a really simple example of adding in data and kind of automating a new customer experience. You obviously could Google that answer, but this just provided you another way to experience those particular facts. Now let's do another example, Formula One. Anybody go out to the Formula One track here? It's really cool, right? I got to meet with the Formula One team, and truly they are a data-driven racing machine. So I just wrote on the bottom here because I thought it was really cool. So during each race, they have 120 sensors on each car, generates 3 gigabytes of data. So think about where you get your data from. We talked about data sources. This is from IoT. They get all these data points, and what they do is they use those data points to create a better driving experience for those driving, to give real-time feedback, to analyze different points of contention during the race, and then they share that data real-time with the fans. So this is really enhancing the Formula One racing experience using machine learning. So now if we look at product, I think this one is really cool. So this was actually started out of a group from University of New Mexico. And what they wanted to do is they really wanted to create a product that was machine learning and AI driven to solve a problem for the elderly. Their data sources, they had people over 65 come in and walk, and they would use motion capture cameras to watch how they walked and how their balance was. They would use pressure mats to measure and determine the gait, and then they use machine learning models to alert someone with their phone when they might be getting in a situation that would cause them to go off balance. And they did a really good job because they determined that men and women have different balance points, so they also looked at some of that diversity of data. And what they've done now is they've taken that data and they've actually created an application with a bot. You can see the bot there that enables the bot to also provide input on taking medicine or helping you out at home. So this is really a product now that's oriented truly an AI-oriented product in the marketplace. Now let's get into some of the operational areas. How many of you guys have ever been to an empathy lab? Anybody? So I just got to walk through an empathy lab and experience it in Silicon Valley. And an empathy lab, they're using artificial intelligence to help train researchers and doctors to figure out, what does it feel like to break a femur like I did? What does it feel like to have glaucoma? What does it feel like to have dementia? And so what they're doing is operationally, to enhance their research, they're using AI, artificial intelligence, plus AR and VR to simulate that experience to help operationalize more of some of the research that's being done. And then another great operational example is the NFL. So the NFL uses machine learning to interpret gameplay. They look at their data is, the length and the velocity of a pass. What's the difference between the receiver and the defender? What's the distance between the quarterback and the receiver? And they interpret all that data. What used to take them 12 hours, they can now get that down to 30 minutes. They do this, of course, for themselves, but they also do it for the fans to really have a better view of the game. But more importantly, operationally, for the teams that are doing the coaching, they now have access to this almost immediately. And then the final area is the business model. How do you change the way that something is done? So if you think about child trafficking, people putting up posters, how do you use machine learning and artificial intelligence? How do you use AI for good to change the game there? Well, Ashton Kutcher is a co-founder of something called Thorn. And what they're doing and leveraging is machine learning to help better match faces to stop some of the human trafficking that's out there today. So the data they feed in are a lot of those posters and Facebook pictures of people who have gone missing to match them up and find them much faster. And then the last example I want to give you is Arteris. You may have seen them. They were just named one of Fortune's top 50 most innovative companies. They were the first AI cloud-based model to get an FDA approval for some of the work that they're doing. And what they do is their data is MRIs. An MRI typically takes a person about 45 minutes to read the MRI. And with deep learning, they can get that down to 15 seconds. They started with cardio, and now they've advanced to lung and liver. And they're also looking at different impacts of cultural differences to identify any issues that might occur. Very cool company, you should check them out as well. So I just went through a whole set of examples to really fill out this framework for you so that you can see, when we talked about Black History Month, we were really looking at automating a customer experience. When we looked at that product that electronic caregiver has, they were looking at training and how they're leveraging that. And then we saw business models from things like Arteris. So it just can help you start to think through, how might I impact innovation and digital disruption in what I'm doing and leverage machine learning to do that. So you got the technology, and our goal is to put machine learning in the hands of every developer and every data scientist. We think this is such a powerful tool that we believe that it should be made easier and simpler so that you don't have to have a PhD in data science to really leverage it. Some of the roles we see in this industry, if you have sons or daughters, that I think will be really important, are these people we call AI teachers. Many companies now have a role called the AI teacher that helps to teach or train the AI system. You can see these are my 3 T's as well. The second one is this T-shaped person who can relate the technology and the business side. Because as you can see, all the examples I gave you, it wasn't about the AI, it was about the solution that you had, so combining that business and technology. And then, of course, there's the AI tech skills, which you're going to need for a while as well. So with this as a background, that's kind of how you transform with some of the tech pieces. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy to talk to you about how to create that environment of innovation that makes it okay to take a risk, to experiment, and to really fail fast with some of these models. So Kathy, take it away.
Thank you. All right. Oh my gosh. How many of you in this room have taken Agile classes or use Agile methodology for software development? Yeah, that's a good chunk of you. Perfect. That is on the people side. You're balancing people and technology. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the human side, as Sandy said, because it's all about unlocking creativity. Innovation is people. So let's talk about it. Innovation is an agile mindset. Agile as in methodology, yes. Agile as in flexible. It's all about a mindset. And there's a couple different parts here. If I can go back there. If we want to create a culture of learning and experimentation, we have to remember that innovation is a mindset. Because everybody wants innovation today, and innovation doesn't work this way. Stay within the budget. Don't do this. Don't rock the boat. Now go innovate. Okay, sure, yeah, I'll get right on that. And that's unfortunately how we treat innovation too often, because we have to create a culture of learning. Now, creativity does like constraints. And what I mean by that are there are things that we have to do, time, money, constraints that work for us. So what I want to get you guys thinking about is when we're talking about creativity and innovation is a couple different things. Creativity is what if? What if we imagined a different world? What if we did this? What if we explored that? That's experimentation. How might we? How many of you ask how might we in meetings? How might we? Because it doesn't presuppose you have an answer already designed. How might we? And finally, yes and, because that is the language of yes and prov. Let's see if we can get this clicker. There we go. But to do that, we have to reframe failure. We've got to reframe failure in companies. Anybody recognize where this is from? Do you know where this picture hangs? In the design school at Stanford, and the School of Design, Design Thinking at Stanford, the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design. And I love this saying more than anything, because I think it summarizes what innovation really is. Too often, we're hung up on the right answer. We've got to let go, and we've got to reframe failure if we're going to succeed.
Faster.
I know. Yeah. It's like it doesn't like it. I'm being too slow when I click it. So let's talk about psychological safety. Because psychological safety is key to us taking risks and creating that culture of learning and innovation. So Google led a project called Project Aristotle, and they studied high-performing teams, about 180 of them, over a period of 2 years. And they wanted to answer this question: what are the key traits that define high-performing teams consistently? And they found the usual suspects. They found communication, respect, all the things you'd expect. And they also found that the #1 trait that defined those teams was something called psychological safety, which we all know what it is instinctively. Am I going to get busted at work if I make a mistake? Will somebody have my back? Will I admit an error because I know it will be well? So many years ago, I worked for a company that was once a Wall Street darling. It was a high flyer in Silicon Valley, based in Mountain View, California. And without saying the name, it did 3D. And everybody wanted to work there. And we had passed a $2 billion market valuation. And it was on the road to becoming a $3 billion market cap. We lost sight of our customers. And we started to stumble. We had competition. And so we weren't doing so great. So we had thousands of employees around the world. And one day, the chief operating officer called everybody into a meeting, an all hands, an urgent all hands. And you know, like when you get called to an urgent all hands, shit's going down. It's like being called to the principal's office. It could be either very bad or very good. So we kind of stuffed into the corporate cafeteria like sardines, as many of us that were on campus. And the chief operating officer stepped up and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, there are elephants and there are penguins." Now, elephants are tribal animals, and they look out for one another. When one of them gets sick, they will rally and stop their migration to make sure that that elephant is well before they continue. And they'll even travel thousands of miles out of their way to go pay homage to the place where one of their members died. By contrast, there are penguins. And penguins live in the harshest environments in Antarctica, really harsh. So if a penguin gets sick, they'll often abandon it. And if it starts to pull too many resources from the group, they'll actually peck that fellow penguin to death. We were all like, okay, here's the moment. Inspire us, please. We're waiting. And then he said, ladies and gentlemen, we are, and I'm like, wait for it, here it comes. Penguins. And everybody just looked at each other. And the guy standing next to me did a spit take with his coffee, and like it went all over the side of my clothes, which made that the second shittiest thing to happen to me in that moment that day. But creativity never recovered. And the company was sold for $25 million years later. It never recovered because you told everybody they were expendable. And that is not a culture of innovation. So the question I want to ask you, there's two, is it safe to experiment and make mistakes in your organization? And here's the one that's self-reflective. This is diagnostic. And that is, do you make it safe for others? That's an important one. Enter yes and. Now, how many of you have taken an improv class? Yay, okay, fantastic. Yes and is the heart and soul of improv. It is collaborative, and you'll recognize this from Agile. It's collaborative, it's transparent. We work together, we're better together. And improvisers are like elephants. We are fundamentally tribal animals. We have each other's backs. The reason we can create magic on a stage together, it's rapid prototype. Talk about rapid prototyping, that's an improv group, that's a show. We are bouncing ideas in real time without a net because we have each other's backs. I got your back. And it is the most collaborative and innovative mindset I know. Yes and is an innovation mindset, just like Agile. And sometimes it's evolutionary, small incremental change. Sometimes it's revolutionary breakthroughs. But it is an innovation mindset. And there are three parts to this that are really important. Really important. The first is listening. Right? Listening's hard. It's hard work. I thought I knew how to listen. And then after 2 decades of improv, it's like, I think I finally get the handle of listening. Right? While I'm talking right now, some of you are thinking about lunch. And it's okay, it's human. It's totally fundamentally human. It's being present. The second thing is saying yes. Say yes to that idea, which fights our instinct. We are wired to say no. We are wired to find fault with everything. Human beings do this all day long. So say yes. And the third is to forward it. By accepting and adding onto an idea, we forward. We move it forward. And that is fundamentally about innovation. So let's look at yes and here. Let's look at this chart. People love graphs. Ooh. So we look at the accept axis and the add and axis. So we accept and add on. And let's sort of just really quickly examine, because it moves ideas and people forward. It's critical. So in that yes but corner, that top there, yes but is really a no. It's where ideas go to die. Ideas go to die there, right? And we all know yes but people. Now, how many of you in this room have been yes butted? Yeah, should be more of you. Right? All right, because you look like an honest bunch. How many of you have done the yes butting to other people? Oh, you guys are so honest. That's awesome. Self-awareness. I like that. Because yes, but is really a no. And, parading in cheap perfume and costume jewelry. It's still a no. We know what it is. Yes, but my idea is better. Yes, but I'm the smartest person in the room. Yes, but your idea sucks. It doesn't go anywhere. It kills ideas. We deny. We block. That next quadrant is no, no. No, no. That's the toddler. No, no. Block. No, 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 no. No, no, no. That's a toddler that's just learned. No, 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 no. Now, moving over to that other quadrant there, down on the lower right, is and. And is really important, because if all we say yes, you'll notice that 0, 0, dead center, and that coordinate space is yes. If all we do is say yes, we don't move an idea forward. You want to go somewhere tonight, Kathy? Yes. Where do you want to go? Yes. Right? On a date, where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? It doesn't move forward. So, but and in that lower quadrant is also dangerous because it's controlling. We all recognize that. We all know the person or person. None of you have lovely people, of course. This isn't you, but somebody you know that always is and you can't get a word in edgewise. That's control, and that is not collaborative. Now go to that upper right quadrant, which is where we want to be. That's the secret sauce. That's yes and innovation. We are accepting the idea, and we are adding onto that to move that idea forward. That's the mindset, and it will move people and ideas forward. So I'm going to ask Sandy to do a little exercise with me, and you guys can follow along. and follow along here. Can we get just a really quick suggestion for an organizational challenge when it comes to implementing machine learning in your company? Somebody have an organizational challenge? Yes, back there.
Lack of training.
Lack of training. Okay, so we're going to start. There is our baseline, lack of training. We also want to make it fun and useful. So we're going to use that as our baseline. Yes, and like specificity. So if you want to use it to solve any kind of challenge or to come up with new ideas, base it on something specific. Thank you. So lack of training. So Sandy and I, first of all, we're going to yes but each other. It's always fun. We're going to yes but each other on how we might solve the problem of machine learning training, get people excited about it. So Sandy,
yes,
right?
Kathy.
We're going to do a hackathon, and we're going to make it fun.
Yes, but this team just isn't fun. I don't think they can do that.
Yes, but we're going to pump them with all kinds of coffee and goodies and sugar them up, and we're going to get them pumped.
Yes, but I just don't think this team has the skill to do it. I just don't know.
Yes, but we'll make their raises dependent upon it. Fun by MBO, because that doesn't F you in fun at all. Yeah.
Yes, but it seems like it's hard. I don't know. Who's going to do this?
Yes, but I really want to do it. And you get, I mean, you're talking heads and it doesn't go anywhere. And you've been in conversations like that. We all have. We can't get that time back. So let's do the same thing, and let's just switch it up to yes and you'll see the energy difference, I hope. All right. So, you know what we could do is we could have a customer day, invite customers to co-create and learn with us.
Yes, and I love that idea because I have 3 customers just the other day who said they needed help with training. That's a great idea.
Oh, yes, and we could get customers to share how they do it internally and get our people excited.
Yes, and we could even have them share some of their mistakes so others don't make the same ones.
Oh, yes, and we could create a story bank where people share what's worked so that everybody has access, and now we're sharing knowledge internally.
Yes, and they could come to our presentation at South by Southwest and learn a lot too.
Yes, and they can follow up with us. Yeah. Thank you. And that's really the magic of yes and. And here's the thing. People get scared with yes and. Some people may be going, oh, yes and, that's commitment I don't need in my life. I don't commit to anything. Here's the thing, you don't have to build it. It's exploration, not commitment. You don't have to write a check for that idea if it doesn't resonate. Not every idea is going to be viable, but it doesn't matter how you come up with ideas. Not every idea is going to be viable. But here's the thing about yes and. Yes and heightens to crazy places. That's okay, because it's much easier to tone down a crazy idea than to play it safe at ABC, and then you end up having ideas that are just like your competitors' ideas. But here's the beauty about yes and, is that we may end up at Z, and Z may be too much, but if we scale back, we might end up with a beautiful idea at elemental P. Because A, B, and C is playing it way too safe, and there is no innovation happening there. So don't be afraid. You don't have to write that check. I always say this. This is how I think about yes and. It doesn't mean you're marrying an idea, just taking it out for a few drinks, showing a good time. You might or might not call it in the morning, but while it's out on a date with you, you're going to treat it with respect. That's all. That's what that is. And you can go very broad and you can go very deep. If one of those ideas was starting a story bank, and if we said, oh my God, that's the idea, let's drill down deep on that idea, you could yes and a whole bunch of stuff for just that idea and go very deep. Yes and is broad, yes and is deep. And yes and is about products, yes and is about customer service, yes and is about sales, yes and is business model. We talked about, you can innovate that. You can also innovate culture, and somebody please in this room be working on that, because it's time for a revolution in corporate culture. Can I get an amen? Woo! Yes, but here's the thing too about yes and, is that yes and is a revenue multiplier. And MIT did a study, and they looked at about 1,100 or so companies over a 7-year period, and what they found was, by co-creating with customers and other departments internally, companies made more money. Think about it this way. Yes and is a creativity multiplier. It has a multiplier effect. Because nobody goes to work and goes, I aspire to mediocrity today. Just want to get my check and not be useful to the world, and call it a day. You want to use what you got, and that's the beauty of this. So where do we use yes and? We use it everywhere. It's the language of customer service, right? Sandy talked about customer experiences being primary area for innovation. What is more customer-centric than saying yes and? Yes and, we hear you, we're gonna make changes at the bank, and we're gonna let you bring your dogs to the bank. Uber, you wanna have a bring your dog into Uber Day? Let's make that happen. Because that is the ultimate yes and. So is sales, recruiting, marketing and sales, co-creating with your customers, because stories come from everywhere. They come from your other employees and other parts of the company, and they come from customers. And it happens in product and engineering too. Absolutely, all over the company. So I'll leave you with this. Here's 5 questions that I like to ask when I'm working with teams, because it really is, I think, a little bit of a diagnostic as to how you're doing. Right? And if you're only answering yes to 1 or 2 of these, that's okay. We're all here to evolve and learn and grow. But if you're answering yes to all these, you're in good shape. Do I create safety and trust? It's that psychological safety that we're talking about. Do I say yes and to employees? Because if I'm not saying yes and to my employees, how the hell can they give their best and yes and customers? They can't. Are we saying yes and customers? Do people know how much freedom they have? Just telling people, go innovate. And people are like, you talk to me like that's ordering a pastrami sandwich. What does that mean? How much degrees of freedom do they have? And then finally, is there social proof and transparency? Are there stories that prove that if I go out on a limb and I experiment, that there's no retribution? That's the psychological safety piece. So I leave it with this thought here as we go back to Sandy, and that is, I think a yes and mindset is everybody's job. Whose job is it? It's your job. Is it your boss's job? Absolutely. Is it the organizational culture's job? You bet. But you can yes and everywhere. Your culture should be doing it, your team should be doing it, your boss should be doing it, you should be doing it. Because here's the thing that's so important. Your job and your career is too important to leave to other people. Yes and is also about the dynamics of a personal relationship. Could you feel the energy difference when Sandy and I were yes anding each other? Yeah. When you catch yourself saying yes but, you can bring yourself back to yes and change the dynamic in that conversation. It is a personal thing about your relationships. And you need people on your team to bring something to commercial viability. So see it not just about ideas, it's about moving people to advocacy with you and building your own team of support. And it's fundamentally important. Absolutely. And here's a little thing. Put a little rubber band on your wrist, and every time you're tempted to yes and, or yes but, if you're tempted to yes but, because, again, we're wired for it, just snap that thing, snap it, and raise your awareness, and then make a new choice, make a yes and. So I leave you with this. What are you willing to change? And I hope you change a yes and. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to go back to a little bit more of the technology and how you guys can go and use yes and, take some of the tech and take it back. Because one of the things that we really want is we want you to have something that you can take back to your boss and say, here's what I learned, but here's how I can put it in action. So from one of the things that we've learned from working with thousands and thousands of customers doing this is the biggest difference that we see in people who are successful and people who are not in terms of machine learning and AI, it's about focus and it's about speed. So I want to just show you this. It's based on 2 of our leadership principles at Amazon. One is called customer obsession. So it's really about thinking about the solution and working backwards from the customer, not thinking about the technology and working backwards to the solution, but thinking about the customer working to the solution. So part of the way that we teach customers to do this, we just talked about training in our yes and exercise. Training is the #1 question that we get, #1 question. So part of what we do is before we get into the technology, we ask companies to write a press release. Tell us what you're trying to do from your customer's perspective. Short headline, 1 page. What is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the solution that you propose? What would customers say about that particular solution? Would that be something that they would like or not like? The second thing we have them do as part of this training is to write a frequently asked questions. Now, this may seem easy because when I first wrote my first set of questions, I thought, oh, I'll just write my own, but they've got to be really tough. It's got to be, what would your customers say if they were sitting and having lunch with you that they loved about this solution? Or if you were having cocktails, what would the customer complain about this particular solution? So you need to think about what are some of the toughest questions that you're going to get. And then you start defining what you want the user interaction and the user experience to be. So always start with that customer in mind. What do you want to have the customer experience as they're going through the design of AI? And the reason this really matters, in particular for artificial intelligence, is that there are so many companies that come to us and they say, we want to do AI. And we say, okay, well, what problem are you trying to solve? And they're like, oh, pick one. We want to do AI. Anybody had that? My boss read about it in an Airplane magazine. We want to do AI. That's not the right place to start. The right place to start is, what is the voice of your customer telling you that they need, and then using AI to help solve that challenge or that problem. I do know, because I had a roundtable with a group of entrepreneurs yesterday. Any entrepreneurs in the room? They told me that if they put AI anywhere in their company, that they get a higher valuation. I think that's interesting, but that's not sustainable. That's not long term. So you really need to think about what that customer problem looks like. So I wanted to talk about one entrepreneur in Silicon Valley who invented something thinking about the technology first. And what he created is an AI-powered salt shaker. And sounds cool, right? An AI-powered salt shaker. You actually use your app on your iPhone if you want to dispense salt. So you don't just pick up the salt shaker. You first have to plug it into your app. And then you type in, I want a 1/4 teaspoon or an 1/8 of a teaspoon. But amazingly, that salt shaker will remember your patterns. It will learn and say, wow, in the morning, Sandy wants a 1/4 teaspoon, and in the evening, she wants an 1/8 of a teaspoon. But wait, there's more. Using serverless and container technology as well, they also connected it to Alexa. So it also has lights in the salt shaker. Those blue will turn to red and pink, and it will show you a light show that, again, learns your mood. Do you want it fast at night and slow in the morning? Now, this uses every buzzword I can think of. It's got IoT sensors in it. It's got AI, machine learning. It's even got connection to Alexa. Do you guys think that this is working backwards from the customer? How many of you would use an app to dispense your salt? This company did get funding, but did not make it. So they were really cool with AI, but they did not really drive what they needed to drive. As opposed to a company like Lionbridge. Lionbridge is the world's largest company that translates languages, and they localize content. And they saw a problem with the cost of doing that manually, as well as the time that you would spend in translating manually. And so what they came in with is that was their challenge, and they used machine learning and machine translation in order to solve that particular customer problem. It reduced their cost by 20%, it reduced the time that they have to translate and localize by 20%. Do you guys see the difference of the two examples? One is tech-oriented, one is customer-oriented. Now, the second area that I think is really important is what we call bias for action. And this was probably one of the hardest things that I had to learn coming from other companies, which is, speed matters. You always hear you have to move fast. Innovation is fast. But some decisions are reversible and some are not. So you really don't want to go fast all the time. You want to really think about how you're taking that calculated risk. We call this the one-way door or the two-way door. So a two-way door is if you try something, let's say changing colors on a website, you can change it to red, and if your customers don't like it, you can change it to blue. There's really not a lot of impact in that. But a one-way door would be, let's say you're going to change your API for a customer. That's a big deal because every customer has to change it. So you want to be very thoughtful, slow, methodical in doing that decision. And this is true as well in machine learning. So let me give you a couple of examples. So this is a startup based out of San Francisco, 360 Fashion. And what they do is they use machine learning and IoT to gather data for a whole set of products and portfolio in fashion tech. So you can see Anina, she's the CEO in the dress. And what she's got is she has machine learning in that dress that learns her gait, her turns, what signals that she's talking to someone. And what it does is it enables the lights to change based on learning her patterns and her motions, so that it might calm down if she's talking to someone, or if she's walking, it might blink really fast. Now, the first thing that she did was she tried connecting this up to the heartbeat, using an IoT sensor to the heartbeat. But what ended up happening is people were wearing it when their heart beat fast. If they were nervous, everybody knew. So that was a two-way door, right? Because she could easily change that decision. So even though she was looking at AI and machine learning, that was a decision that she could change. Two-way door. But as you're thinking about your solutions, there will also be one-way doors. This is Redfin, a company based out of Seattle that has really taken real estate online. And Bridget Fry is their CTO. She actually spoke here last year. She's doing some really amazing stuff with machine learning. They had this idea, talking to their customers, working backwards, of putting up an estimate of your house's value. And so they were rushing, they were hiring data scientists, rushing to get this out the door. And then they paused and they said, you know what, this is really a one-way door. Because if we put out an estimate of the value of a house, and we say your house is worth $1 million on Saturday, and then next Saturday your house is worth $200,000, that's a big difference. We're not gonna earn the trust that we need from our customers. So they stepped back, they involved the real estate agents as well as the buyers and the sellers, and they found that sellers will talk to the real estate agent about this, so they didn't want machine learning to be in a black box. So they were able to reveal how they came up with the value of the house. So this estimator now is done using machine learning and AI. It is deemed the most reliable estimate of your house's value. In fact, some banks are considering using this instead of getting the appraisal that you have to pay for, using something like this to do the appraisal of your house. So thank goodness they stepped back and they said, this is not about getting first to market, unlike 360 Fashion, which wanted to come out with that beautiful AI robotic dress. This is something we need to be thoughtful about and really take our time. Does that make sense to you guys as you're thinking through your projects? Okay, good, thank you. And so for Redfin, they really engaged the human side. They made the data available so the real estate agent could explain to the customer what was going on in that machine learning algorithm. This is becoming more and more important, that people don't want just the answer, they want to see how you came up with the answer as well. So advice for how you might want to do this. So the first thing you want to do is you want to think about how you might build these templates and build these models. You need to look at, can you get some pre-built templates based on what you're trying to solve? If it's a customer service problem, like a chat bot, for instance. You have to label your data. Remember we talked about if you have an apple, you want to label as an apple so you know the insight. And then look at how you're building those machine learning algorithms. Next, you have to do your training piece. So this piece really helps you to figure out how to optimize that training. So even though it's not a lot of the work, inference is more of the work, you really need to figure out how to optimize that. And then finally, how to get that deployed. So funny story about Redfin, this helps you to figure out how to auto-scale and how to make sure that you're not consuming too much compute. When Redfin first turned on their estimator, they did not have some of the things turned on to optimize it. So they were just running, consuming a lot of infrastructure. So this can help you figure out how to do that best area of deployment as well. So there are other ways, too, that you can figure out how to teach and how to learn. I don't know if you guys saw our announcement of Deep Racer. This is really using reinforcement learning instead of just labeling. And so this is a little miniature car. It's got sensors on it to collect data. It has 2 batteries, one for the machine learning and one for the compute, one to power the car. And what we're doing is we're setting up leagues. And the leagues are really about not just competing against each other, but also figuring out how do you learn machine learning in a fun way. So we're hoping that kids, boys and girls, and all of you will play with something like this and then learn some of the mechanics so that machine learning isn't so hard to consume. Okay, so let's talk about putting some of this together. I wanted to give you a customer story for our closing slide. So a company called Just Eat, I don't know if you know them or not, but they're out of the UK. They're a $5 billion startup. That's how they consider themselves. They work backwards from their customers all the time. They have 19 million of them. They are the group that actually delivers food from a whole set of restaurants, almost 80,000 restaurants today. So if you think about what they have to do and what they had to get done, it's a big challenge. They've just moved from Europe to Canada, and they're going to be coming here to the US. So they were looking for some new ideas about how they could figure out what were some of the next steps that they could take in making ordering food easier, safer, funner. And so using a lot of the techniques that Kathy just talked about, yes and, they set up some mechanisms to get some of those great ideas. They did hackathons. So Kathy suggested a hackathon and I said no, but they use hackathons to get ideas from their customers. They do venture programs. They do a lot of internal betas, so they're testing, they have that two-way door open. They started a blog where they collect ideas from their customers. That blog is one of the top tech blogs in the UK. So they're constantly surveying and getting information. So one of the interesting ideas that they had was instead of having people call up to order their food, why couldn't they do it through Alexa? So I could say, Alexa, I would like to order pizza tonight. And Alexa would say,
well, hello, Sandy. I've found a couple different places nearby. Austin Pizza, Gino's Pizza, Blah Blah Pizza.
I'll take Blah Blah Pizza today. Or I could say, Alexa, I want to order some sushi tonight.
Well, you know, Sandy, I know you're not very patient, and may I suggest something else, like a local Chinese restaurant?
Absolutely. So it learns your patterns. It knows that you don't like to wait longer than an hour, for instance. It knows what pizza place that you like. And this has really accelerated their sales of pizzas, of food overall, as Just Eat is progressing forward. They're using all machine learning, but again, they didn't start with machine learning. They started with a customer challenge that was solved by machine learning. I'll also tell you, they built their corpus of knowledge, or that database, from old SQL data, so from old legacy data that they brought into the ability to use that, so they weren't data poor. They had enough data to get that information out. So if you think about what we've taught you, hopefully today you've learned a lot, you've laughed a little bit, hopefully you now have some things that you can take back to your companies. I think that training is one of the most important things, and that's why Kathy and I wanted to end with this slide. The Solution Lab is open to any customers who want to come in and use it. We have the Machine Learning University. And then Kathy has this yes and innovation mindset. It really takes the combination of all of this, of technology and that agile mindset, to really drive this home. But the real message that we really wanted to leave you with is don't overanalyze it. Get going. Try something out. Use Deep Racer and have fun and upgrade your skills. Try the yes and methodology. Look at some of the things that you can do to really have an impact for AI and that agile methodology. Thank you all so much for your time.